For 10 years, I dedicated my life to supporting Ethan, pouring everything I had into his future until he earned his PhD. I was there when he was just a kid from a small town, studying with a desperate intensity to escape his origins. I watched him transform into a tech mogul, a man flush with new money and success. And then, after all that time, after all my sacrifices, he asked for a divorce. Before I could even process the betrayal, a car accident stole my life. For 6 months, my spirit lingered, an invisible spectator to the world I had left behind. It was then that I saw the ugly, unvarnished truth about everyone I had known. My grandmother, the very person who had pressured me into dropping out of school to work, collected a tidy $500,000 insurance payout from my death without shedding a tear. Ethan, the man who had claimed we had drifted apart, that we had nothing in common anymore, married his pregnant student, a young, beautiful trophy wife, less than a month after I was buried. Then I woke up. The jarring sensation of breath filling my lungs, the feeling of sheets against my skin was overwhelming. I was back in my sophomore year of high school, returned to the exact day my life had first been derailed, the day I was forced to abandon my education. Ethan was waiting for me just outside the dean's office, his expression a careful mixture of concern and pity. "Clara," he said, his voice soft as he reached out to comfort me. "It's going to be okay. I'll help you. I can help you find a good college to apply to later." The sight of him, so young and earnest, filled me with a cold fury. "Get lost," I told him, my voice flat. "I'm getting into Harvard, and I'm going to do it by myself." I shot him a glare that made him recoil slightly before I shoved past him and pushed open the heavy wooden door to the office. "Sir, I'm not dropping out." Mr. Davison, the dean of students, looked up from his paperwork, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Clara, in that case, your guardian will need to settle the outstanding $8,904.90 in tuition and fees as soon as possible." I'm here. The door swung open again, and my grandmother shuffled in, clutching a large woven plastic bag that seemed to be her constant companion. "Sir, don't listen to a word this child says. We're leaving right now." As she spoke, she began unceremoniously shoving my textbooks from the table into her bag, muttering under her breath about how much she could get for them as scrap paper. "Grandma, put my books down," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not dropping out." "If you don't come home this instant, I don't have a single penny for you," she retorted, her voice rising. "If this school hadn't offered to pay your tuition in the first place, I never would have let you attend this stupid, expensive high school." Mr. Davison's expression soured at her words. "Ma'am, when we recruited Clara after middle school, the tuition waiver we offered was conditional. We made that offer because we believed in her potential to get into a top-tier university. Now that her class rank has fallen from first to 500th, the school can no longer justify sponsoring a student who isn't performing." "Useless is useless, then," she snapped. "Let's go. She's more useful at home anyway." By useful, she meant a life of drudgery, delivering milk in the pre-dawn hours, spending the day on endless chores, and working nights at a convenience store. Every dollar I earned would be funneled to my so-called brother Ricky, so he could waste it on cosmetic upgrades for his video game characters. "I'm not going," I insisted, turning back to the dean. "Mr. Davison, I'll study hard, I promise. Please, just give me another chance." I shook off my grandmother's hand as it clamped down on my arm. Given a second chance at life, there was no way I was going to sacrifice my education again. But my grandmother was relentless. She grabbed me by the ear, her fingers pinching painfully. "You damn girl, study what? Your father just died and we have no income. How is your brother supposed to pay for his school? You're just like your mother, dying early and bringing nothing but bad luck to this family." The mention of Ricky sent a surge of fury through me. "Ricky isn't even Dad's son. You adopted him just to carry on some stupid family name, and for that, you'd throw away your own granddaughter's entire future." I was so incensed that I screamed the words, my voice echoing in the small office. Seeing her usually obedient granddaughter explode with such vehemence, my grandma froze, stunned into silence for a moment. Then, her lips began to tremble, and she clutched her chest in a display of theatrical agony before collapsing to the floor. You wretched girl, are you trying to kill me? I can't go on. Her loud, mournful wailing quickly drew the attention of other teachers who poked their heads out of nearby offices. I glanced at the doorway. Ethan, who had been lingering, was long gone. I decided it was time to fight fire with fire. I dropped to my knees in front of her, rolled up the sleeve of my school uniform, and revealed an arm covered in faint reddish marks from her pinches. Grandma, I'm your own flesh and blood, I cried, my voice thick with manufactured tears. You're forcing me to drop out of school just so you can marry me off for money. That 40-year-old Mr. Henderson needs someone to take care of him, and when I said no, you beat me. How could you? Hearing this, the teachers and students who had gathered around began to murmur amongst themselves, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. Seeing that my performance was having the intended effect, I shuffled forward on my knees, sobbing my heart out. Grandma, I'm begging you. I promise I'll get into a good college. I'll make plenty of money for our family. To be honest, I had learned these manipulative tricks from her. In my previous life, she had knelt just like this to pressure me into that arranged marriage. I had eventually escaped by injuring Mr. Henderson, stealing my ID card, and running away in the dead of night. I ended up on the streets of the city, sleeping in alleyways, digging through trash for food, and eating expired bread to survive. Back then, only Ethan seemed to show me any kindness. His few words of comfort were the only solace in my miserable existence. He would send me cheap snacks, and in return, I would send him money to hire expensive tutors. And in the end, after all of that, he looked down on me for being a high school dropout, saying I wasn't good enough for a distinguished professor like him. It didn't matter that I had educated myself, that I had audited classes at his university and mastered all the graduate-level coursework. It still wasn't enough. He still said we had nothing in common. Was a piece of paper, a diploma, really that important? Yes, and this time I refused to give it up. The crowd in the hallway was growing larger, and Mr. Davison, clearly worried about the scene it was causing, quickly moved to help both of us up. Clara's grandmother, the girl is only 16. You can't force her into a marriage, that's against the law. My grandma hadn't expected me to pull a stunt like that, but she didn't panic. She just remained stubbornly on the floor. If she doesn't get married, is the school going to take care of her? If she doesn't drop out, I'm not paying a single dime for her tuition. Then I will. From the doorway, my literature teacher, Miss Albright, stepped forward, unable to stand by any longer. She approached the dean's desk. Mr. Davison, Clara is a very bright student. Her middle school grades were exceptional. She's working so much that she simply has no time left for her schoolwork. I never realized her home situation was this dire. I hope the school can consider waiving part of the fees. I'll cover the rest. There's no precedent for that, Mr. Davison said, frowning. Miss Albright glanced at my grandma, who was still on the floor. I plan to apply for her to live in the dorms. As long as she doesn't have to go home, I'm certain she can get into a top university. In my past life, Miss Albright had begged me to stay in school. She told me my middle school teachers had raved about how exceptionally smart I was, and that it would be a terrible shame for me to quit. But I was so foolish back then. I actually believed Ethan when he spouted nonsense about how girls could only do well before high school, and that no matter how hard they tried, they could never keep up with the boys. On top of that, I was so infatuated with my first relationship that I had lost all interest in studying. My grades slipped, which only made me want to study even less. It was a vicious cycle. Miss Albright, I can't let you pay for me. As grateful as I was, this was my life, and I had to take responsibility for it. Mr. Davison, I'm asking the school to continue my scholarship. If I get into Harvard, I promise I'll pay back every single cent. I'll even do recruitment promotions for the school for free. How about that? Mr. Davison, who had just taken a sip of water, spit it out in a fine mist. Harvard? Are you serious? Our school is lucky if we get one student into a decent state university each year. We practically have to pray for that, and you're sitting here talking about Harvard. I just didn't have time to study before, I explained, knowing how unconvincing I sounded. Honestly, I felt like I was dreaming too. I had barely studied for my entire freshman year and was lagging far behind everyone else. Mr. Davison clearly didn't believe a word of it. Never mind all that. Finals are next week. Let's see your scores before you start making any more grand promises. Even Miss Albright seemed to think I was being unrealistic. Clara, don't worry about the fees. If you feel bad about it, you can just pay me back after you get a job. It's all the same. I was quiet for a moment. I knew that some things could only be proven with results. In my past life, desperate to have something to talk about with Ethan, I had audited his advanced math classes. I would stand by the classroom door and just listen. I had the foundation. I even once solved a complex problem the professor had given out faster than anyone else in the class. I was confident in my intelligence. Plus, after years of working service jobs, my English was quite good, especially my speaking ability. The biggest problem I faced now was the lack of time. But no matter what, I had no way out, and I couldn't afford to show any weakness now. Mr. Davison, I said, my voice steady, for the final exams next week, if I can score in the top 10 in our grade, will the school believe in me then? Miss Albright patted my shoulder, about to say something to dissuade me, but I gave her a determined nod. She turned to plead my case. Mr. Davison, I'll tutor her personally. Just give her one chance. Well, if you're putting it that way, Miss Albright. Fine. But if she doesn't make the cut, she can't keep hanging around here. Deal. Without even a backward glance at my grandmother, I snatched the woven plastic bag from her, rescuing my books, and dragged it back toward the classroom. It was break time, and the hallway was filled with the sounds of students laughing and fooling around. The moment I walked into my classroom, all eyes turned to me. I ignored them, dragging the bag through the aisle, following my memory back to my assigned seat. This seat's taken. A tall, tan guy was sitting right on my desk, his legs stretched out. This was my deskmate, Mark. He was a classic school bully whose favorite hobby seemed to be picking on me. My desk drawer was already stuffed with his junk, a handheld game console, half-eaten bags of snacks, various trading cards, and random magazines. Well, I'm back and I need to start studying, I said, not bothering to argue with a juvenile punk like him. Get your stuff out. With your grades, why bother studying? You couldn't even get into a community college. Don't waste your time, he sneered. Look at you, dragging that trash bag around. You're trash yourself. Go home and pick through the garbage with your family. He let out a loud, braying laugh, and a few other students started laughing along with him. Yeah, I told you she cheated on the entrance exams. So what if she was 10th in the city back then? Now she's 10th from the bottom. Slam! I slammed the heavy bag down on the desk, shooting a ferocious glare at the laughing students. Seeing their normally timid, weak classmate suddenly blow up like this left them stunned and staring at me in silence. I dumped everything out of the drawer onto the floor, pulled out my chair, sat down, and started taking out my books. Mark, you can just buy your way into college, but I can't. So you'd better not disturb me. I don't have time for your moronic little bullying games. Mark was stunned again, his face turning a bright, blotchy red. The other students didn't know that his family had made a hefty donation to get him into this prestigious high school. In my past life, I had only found out about it later, from Ethan. He and Mark had been good friends. What are you talking about? He stammered. I hadn't spelled it out, but he had clearly gotten the message. His usual bravado vanished. Just then, the English teacher, Mrs. Gable, walked in, and the classroom finally fell silent. Our English teacher was notoriously tough. The students called her the dragon lady behind her back. She was in a bad mood again, which could only mean our class's mock exam scores were lower than the other honors classes' scores again. You could have gotten an 80 on this test with your eyes closed, yet some of you only managed to get a 40. She fumed, slamming a stack of papers on her desk. I could sprinkle birdseed on the answer sheet, let a chicken peck at it, and it would probably score higher than some of you. Now we're going to have a pop quiz on last night's vocabulary. One wrong answer, and you're copying it 100 times. I need 2 people to come up to the board. Mark looked at the bright red 40 inches on my test paper and raised a hand, volunteering me. Teacher, Claire said she knows them all. He shot me a smug, challenging look. I sneered internally. It looked like I had gone too easy on him. The teacher was already annoyed with my poor grades. Fine, Clara, you come up. As the last place student, if you get any wrong, you'll copy them 200 times. Teacher, Mark wants to do the quiz too, I said, giving Mark a sweet, innocent smile. Mark froze, clearly not expecting me to fight back so immediately. We both went up to the board. At first, I didn't write anything, deliberately letting him get a head start. Mark was practically preening. Can't write it, can you? You might as well just go sit down and start your 200 copies now. It'll be faster. Honestly, sophomore level English words were a piece of cake for someone who had memorized the entire GRE vocabulary list. I had also already figured out that the teacher was calling out words from Unit 4 in the exact order they appeared in the textbook. As luck would have it, right before my accident in my past life, I had been tutoring a high school kid on this exact material. Mark, you want to bet that I can wait until she's finished calling out all the words and then write them all at once? What are you talking about? If you can actually do that, I'll do a handstand while I do my punishment copies. No talking, Mrs. Gable snapped at us and continued calling out words. My interruption had thrown Mark off his rhythm. He missed a few, leaving blank spaces on the board. You're sure about that handstand? I raised my voice intentionally. A man's got to keep his word. Everyone heard you. Mark was getting annoyed. Then do it. I'm just waiting for the teacher to finish. Clara! Mrs. Gable was about to yell at me when she saw me start writing on the board at lightning speed. I was writing so fast that by the end, I was actually ahead of her dictation. The other students gasped in amazement. Mark grabbed my wrist and started patting down the pockets of my uniform. What did you hide in there? Mark, stop that, Mrs. Gable shouted. I was watching her the whole time. She did it herself. Clara, I had no idea you had memorized the entire unit's vocabulary in order. Very good. Just don't get a 40 on the next test. She then turned her glare on Mark. Mark, you got 5 words wrong. Come to my office after class to do your copies. I paid rapt attention for the rest of the class. Just before the bell rang, Mrs. Gable threw a piece of chalk toward the window. The student sitting there was Julian, who was known among the students as the Sleeping Saint. Rumor had it that from the day he started at this school, no one had ever seen anything but the back of his head during class. But the school administration didn't dare say a word, terrified they'd upset the guy whose family had funded the entire new building we were currently in. In my past life, I never really had any interaction with Julian. The only time was after I dropped out of school. I was working under the table at a nearby restaurant, and a customer was giving me a hard time trying to get handsy. He had stepped in and helped me out, but I was so worried that Ethan would get jealous that I had just run away without even a word of thanks. After class, I dragged my woven plastic bag over and sat down in the empty seat next to Julian. I needed a new desk mate, and Mark was far too much of a nuisance. Maybe I was making too much noise because Julian slowly opened his eyes. He had pale skin and looked at me with sleepy, annoyed eyes. Julian, I don't want to sit with Mark anymore. I'll sit here if you don't mind, I said quickly, pulling my books out and arranging them on the empty side of the desk. You're asking me after you've already set everything up? Julian's voice was like a low, murmuring spring, deep and quiet. Because I knew you wouldn't mind, I said, trying to sound a little charming, and I lightly touched his arm. The tips of his pale ears instantly turned a faint shade of red. He pulled his arm away, turned his face, and said in the same cool tone, Just don't wake me up. The 2 girls sitting in front of us turned around and glared at me, then started whispering to each other. Oh my God, Julian actually said yes. How did she get to just sit there? If I knew it was that easy, I would have done it myself. Yeah, go tell the teacher she switched seats without permission. I cleared my throat loudly. Sure, go ahead. But have you guys heard that Miss Albright is going to be paying my tuition? Teenage girls were so predictable. One sentence and they immediately assumed Miss Albright was playing favorites with me. They didn't dare say another word, which was exactly the peace and quiet I wanted. Beside me, the head that was now buried in its arms shook slightly with a very low, muffled laugh. You really had to listen closely to hear it. During the lunch break, the classroom was buzzing with noise, but I kept my head down and studied until I saw Ethan walk in. He had been gone all morning, apparently preparing for some upcoming English competition. There was only one spot available from our school. Why should that jerk get it? He walked straight toward me. Are you okay? I got you some food from the cafeteria. So that's why he had disappeared from the dean's office door earlier. I stared at him. Right now, in this timeline, was when Ethan and I were just starting to have feelings for each other. He was an orphan, and I was basically one as well. In our youth, we had seen each other as kindred spirits, finding a fragile warmth in one another's company. I remembered how he swore he'd get into a good college to prove everyone who had ever looked down on him wrong. I remembered him crying, saying he wanted to repeat a year of school but had no money, begging me to help him. And I remembered the cold, distant look on his face when he gave me the silent treatment, forcing me to agree to a divorce. Ooh, look. The number one student is bringing lunch for the last place student. You two are so pathetic, pretending to be in a relationship. Jessica, our class beauty, entered the room, her voice dripping with scorn, making her little clique of friends behind her burst into laughter. She had gathered a small group around her, constantly cycling members in and out to maintain her queen bee status. Bringing someone a lunchbox means you're dating? I said casually as I packed my books back into the woven bag. How would you know so much about it? Are you secretly dating someone? Nobody in the class knew it yet, but after graduation, the news had spread like wildfire in our class group chat. She had an online boyfriend all through high school, snuck out at night to meet him at internet cafes, and after graduation, she met up with him in person, got pregnant, and became a mother before she even finished her first year of college. You're full of it. Jessica looked like I had just stepped on her tail. She lunged forward, about to throw my books on the floor. I shoved her away and glanced at Ethan, who was just standing there, frozen. He had a fragile ego, so in our past life, I was always the one who had to make a scene to defend him. The way he was looking at me now, with that same helpless expression, was exactly the same as back then. I couldn't be bothered with him. I was too busy protecting my books. But Jessica's friends rushed over, the woven bag split open, and they started stomping on my precious textbooks. You can mess with me, but not my books. I couldn't hold back my anger. I kicked a desk out of my way and charged at them. After a chaotic brawl, the five of us were dragged to the office by our homeroom and math teacher, Mr. Russo. Mr. Russo slammed his hand on the desk. What do you think you're doing? A group of girls fighting in the classroom? Is this how students in an honors class are supposed to behave? Are you not ashamed of yourselves? If you don't want to study, just go home. He then pointed a trembling finger at me. Especially you, Clara. You have no shame at all. I don't usually like to be harsh on female students, but your grades are terrible. Your character is terrible. You fight. You're late for class. You skip class. Do you have any idea how many conduct points our class has lost because of you? They stepped on my books first. I tried to explain, but I knew Mr. Russo wouldn't believe me. After all, Jessica was always the perfect, well-behaved student in front of the teachers. Jessica, after composing herself, suddenly put on a timid, tearful expression and raised her hand. Mr. Russo, I want to report Clara for bad behavior. She was seducing Ethan, and when I caught them and said I would tell a teacher, they attacked me. Ethan was the school's best hope for getting into a top university. Hearing this, Mr. Russo's anger boiled over. He threw a book at me, but Miss Albright, who was sitting at the next desk, intercepted it. Russo, seducing is a very strong word. Why don't you ask the boy involved? Ethan was brought into the office quickly. Mr. Russo questioned him angrily. This had never happened in my past life, but I already knew what Ethan would say. He was nothing but a refined opportunist, always choosing the path that benefited him most. Clara asked me to get her a plate of food. Ethan's voice was full of embarrassment, and his face was as pale as his worn-out school uniform. Teacher, I really didn't have any other intentions. He warmed to his topic, the words tumbling out. She's been asking me questions about her schoolwork, and that's how we— Wait, what subject did I ask you about? My sudden interruption made Ethan stammer. English. Ha, what a joke, I scoffed. Me, someone who could converse fluently with foreigners as a waitress, needing to ask you about high school English? Mr. Russo, he's lying. First of all, he offered to get me food. I didn't ask him. Second, I have never asked him for help with English. My English might not be the best in this class, but I certainly don't need his help. You, with a 40 on your last test, are trying to say your English is better than Ethan's? Mr. Russo waved the grade sheet in his hand and practically threw it in my face. Staring at the dark, inky 40, I had nothing to say. Fine. If you don't pass English on the final exam, you can get out of the honors class. Go to a regular class. Okay, I replied coolly. Back at my seat, I started planning my study schedule. This was for college admissions, after all. Even though I'd studied advanced math and my English was good, I'd never actually done any SAT-style questions. I had no idea if I could actually do it. I was getting anxious and started bouncing my leg without even realizing it. Julian, sitting next to me, frowned slightly. Can you please not move? Sorry, I said, shamelessly taking the opportunity. Can I borrow your review materials? After all, the thick SAT prep book on his desk was so pristine, it looked like he was planning to sell it to next year's students. Julian didn't say anything, just pushed the book toward me. I flipped to the table of contents and looked at the different sections of the English test. The prep book had two versions. A harder one for second-round review in senior year and an easier one for first-round review. Either way, they were organized by topic. Multiple choice, reading comprehension, writing. Is that how you study? Are you flipping through it or actually reading it? Cho, Jessica jeered from a few seats away. Other students noticed how fast I was turning the pages and started to snicker. Is that the legendary quantum reading method? Finishing a book in 25 seconds? More like 250, someone else quipped. I ignored them and kept reading. English is all about vocabulary, and the graduate-level words I'd memorized for the GRE already covered everything I would need for the SATs. Even though I hadn't practiced the specific question formats much, a little bit of practice would be enough. If Ethan had claimed I'd asked him about math, I might have had to back down. SAT math wasn't something you could solve just because you knew advanced calculus, but English? Not a problem. As my mind wandered, Julian suddenly kicked the leg of his desk. The loud bang was followed by dead silence. What's all the noise? He snapped, glaring at the group of girls who had been chattering. Jessica and her friends looked like strangled ducks, their faces red with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Being called out by the handsome guy they all had a crush on was always humiliating. Jessica ran out of the room crying, probably to find her uncle, Mr. Russo. I muttered to myself. Can you really afford to mess with him? Did she really think Mr. Russo would give Julian a hard time just for her sake? What are you laughing at? Julian heard me. You think I'm some kind of bully who just throws his weight around? I didn't expect him to be so sharp. No, I just have a toothache. Whether he believed me or not, I started tidying up his messy desk for him. You sleep. Go ahead and sleep. I promise I won't say another word. My brief interaction with Julian in my past life had made me think he wasn't as cold and unapproachable as he seemed. I started organizing his things. I'll wake you up when it's time for the next class. How to arrange the books, where to put the pens. I had my own system. Julian was about to stop me from tidying up when he paused. We organize our desks the same way. The comment sounded a bit like a pickup line. My hands paused, and a faint blush crept up his face. I didn't mean it like that. I know, I believe you. Julian didn't say anything else. At that moment, I had no idea how much those three simple words, I believe you, meant to him. As expected, Mr. Russo didn't do anything about Julian. Jessica came back to class crying. With her quiet sobs as a soundtrack, I happily got through my first evening study session of my new life. It was like heavenly music. My ears were suddenly clear. Reciting poetry in my head felt particularly appropriate, but when school let out, my life felt as tragic as the poet's subject. I didn't have a dorm room approved yet, so I had to go home for the time being. The 600-square-foot apartment in the old part of town was the only thing my father had left behind. Ricky had the master bedroom, my grandma had the second bedroom, and I had a tiny bedroom that had been partitioned off from the living room. At 10 o'clock at night, the only sound in the house was a sweet female voice from a video game shouting, "Double kill!" I quickly took a shower, but before I could get back to my little partitioned space, Ricky came out of his room. His hair was a dry, yellow mess. He was out of breath after taking just a few steps, and his face was greasy. He didn't look like he belonged in our family at all. His eyes flickered around, landing where they shouldn't. Transfer me 500. I need to buy a new skin for my character. When he said the word skin, he actually gulped. My skin isn't so bad either, Ricky said, as his fat hand reached for me. Smack. I slapped his hand away with all my might. Are you crazy? I'm warning you. Touch me again and I'll break your hand. My decision not to drop out of school had clearly set off a butterfly effect. What are you dodging for? We're not even related by blood. Ricky sneered, squeezing into my small space and trying to cover my mouth. You bastard! I knew I couldn't count on my grandma for help. I grabbed the small lamp next to me and smashed it on the back of Ricky's head. With a loud crash, the outwardly tough but inwardly weak Ricky collapsed to the floor. He struggled, but his own fat wouldn't let him get up. His cry of pain finally brought my grandma out of her room. Why did you hit your brother? She demanded, grabbing and pinching me without even asking what had happened. I fended her off with one hand and dialed 911 with the other. Hello, 911? Yes, it's an assault. I don't know the person. When she heard I had called the police, my grandma panicked. She couldn't reach my phone, so she just threw herself on the floor in her usual dramatic fashion. What have I done to deserve this? If you have your brother arrested, how am I supposed to live? I won't be able to face your father in the afterlife. Ricky also staggered over, trying to grab my phone. I sidestepped him and ran out of the apartment, all the way downstairs, and waited for the police car to arrive. 2 officers accompanied me back upstairs. As soon as we walked in, we saw Ricky on the floor, groaning as if he were seriously injured. Is this the person? One of the officers asked. Yes, I'm so scared. I don't even know who he is, I said, my voice trembling, putting on a good show. What do you mean you don't know him? This is your brother. My grandma rushed over. Officers, they're brother and sister. This is all just a misunderstanding. I'm an only child. I've been at school, leaving early and coming back late every day. I've never seen this person before in my life, I said through tears, hiding behind one of the officers. Never seen him? Your brother has been living here for 6 months. Ricky had been sent over by his biological parents right after my dad died. Do you have the adoption paperwork? The officer asked, unconcerned with the family drama. Without official adoption papers, it's not legally recognized. But he's family. He's just a kid. What does he know? My grandma tried to argue. The kid in question was so overweight that he defied any normal age definition. I provided my evidence, a recording on my old phone of his earlier threats. Ricky didn't dare say another word. My grandma finally started to back down, her voice pleading. Clara, he's your brother. You can't let them take him away. He's going to be a government official someday. A government official? That requires at least a bachelor's degree. Ricky had dropped out of vocational school. I scoffed inwardly, letting her throw her tantrum. After Ricky was taken away by the police, my grandma finally realized I wasn't going to budge. She viciously crumpled my clothes that were lying on a chair. You're a tough one, aren't you? Then get out of this house. This is your brother's house now. Get as far away from here as you can. You won't get a single penny of this family's money. With that, the door was slammed in my face. Carrying a small bundle of my things, I left the home I had lived in for 16 years. With nowhere else to go, I could only spend the night at a 24-hour McDonald's. In my past life, after I'd run away, I never once went back. Ricky had smoothly inherited everything from my grandma. But this time, I wasn't going to let that animal get away with it. The apartment was in my father's name. Legally, I was entitled to at least half of it, but with finals just around the corner, I had to wait until after the exams to deal with it. Sighing, I pulled out the review materials I had gotten from Julian and started doing practice problems under the harsh fluorescent light at 5 in the morning. At 6:30, for the first time in years, I wasn't at a part-time job. I went straight to the morning study session at school. Not many people were there yet, but Ethan was among them. Unlike Julian, Ethan was on a school scholarship. With no other talents to fall back on, he had to study himself to death just to hold on to his fragile opportunity. I used to admire his self-discipline, right up until the day he was getting his PhD and refused to marry me. Ethan, it's been 9 years. You've got your doctorate, and we're finally stable. I had waited for that moment for so long. Ethan had always been reserved, so I decided to be the one to propose. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Clara, I need to think about it. But his thinking lasted for 3 years. Ethan graduated, and I finally forced the issue by getting pregnant. But right after we got married, I had a miscarriage due to overwork. Then, he wanted a divorce. You were the one who said you wanted to be with me forever. Why did you change? Why? I screamed, unwilling to accept it. He had split our once happy home in two, never crossing the line into my side of the apartment. The Professor Ethan, who could chat happily with the cafeteria lady, wouldn't say a single word to me at home. Everyone at the university knew that Professor Ethan had a wife from the countryside, a woman who threw dishes, smashed pots, and used their unborn child to force him to repay his debt of gratitude. I can give you back all the money you spent on me over the years as long as you agree to a divorce, Ethan had said coldly. Give me back the money? Why didn't you say that when you were repeating a year in high school? Why didn't you say that when you needed money for college tuition or for grad school prep classes? My questions were laced with despair. Now that you're successful, you just want to walk away? Am I supposed to just lose everything? My time and my money? At 30, I was filled with a bitter resentment. I had stormed out of the house and was immediately hit by a car. It's better not to dwell on the past. Just seeing Ethan now was enough to make me lose my appetite. It was disgusting. But he slowly walked over to my desk. About that bet you made yesterday. I'll help you explain things to Mr. Russo. He looked at the prep book in my hand. That's Julian's book, right? You shouldn't get too close to him. We're not from the same world. What do you mean, not from the same world? Does being poor automatically make you a better person? I knew Ethan's deepest insecurities and poked right at them. And I haven't even settled the score with you for lying yesterday. I had no choice. Ethan's face went pale, his defense weak. Your motto is to benefit yourself at others' expense. You and I are the ones who walk different paths. Ethan was about to say something else when more people started trickling into the classroom. That's my seat. Julian had arrived looking surprisingly early. It was just a simple statement of fact, but it made Ethan flee as if he'd suffered a great humiliation. After Julian sat down, I pushed the stack of completed exercises over to his side of the desk. Thanks. He immediately put his head down on the desk to sleep. Then, he suddenly asked, Thanks for this, or for just now? I knew he was asking about Ethan, but I didn't say anything. The week of final exam review always flew by. It was mostly self-study, filling in the gaps in our knowledge. All that brain power uses a lot of energy, which is why many high school students keep a stash of snacks in their desks. Some people's desks were practically convenience stores. Unfortunately, mine was not. Not only was it not a convenience store, it was an empty warehouse. Today, I finally understood what a stomach rumbling like thunder truly means. Ugh, Julian grumbled, looking grumpy from being woken up by the noise. A little tuft of his dark hair was sticking straight up, which suited his sleepy look perfectly. Sorry, I said, stuffing the last few bites of the single piece of bread I'd had for the day into my mouth and gulping down some hot water to soothe my protesting stomach. I was broke, with only $200 to my name, and I was planning to use that money to consult a lawyer about inheritance law. This week, I could only afford one meal a day, surviving on sheer willpower. I'd eat more during the exam week. Thank goodness for Julian's personal convenience store. Whatever, just don't wake me up again, Julian mumbled, pulling a loaf of bread from his backpack and handing it to me. When he saw I wasn't taking it, he said impatiently, I bought this one myself. The stuff in my desk is all from other people. Giving it to you would be disrespectful to them. Julian seemed a bit more talkative today. No wonder so many people have a crush on you, I remarked, taking a bite of the bread. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. The boy, who had already buried his head to go back to sleep, had his ears turn red again at my comment. This kid, how could he be so cute? Hey, how about I help you with math? I genuinely wanted to repay him. Since he was planning to study abroad later, his English must be good. And I had made some good progress with my math studies this morning. Julian silently opened our most recent test papers. One had a bright red 25 inches on it, the other a bright red 66. You're sure you want to help me with math? Would you believe me if I said my math was pretty good in middle school? He rolled his eyes at me and went back to sleep. I survived until the day of the final exam by mooching off Julian's bread supply every day. As soon as I entered the exam room, I was met with Mr. Russo's death stare. I looked around and saw the room was filled with our school's finest students. The exam seating was based on grades. As the last place student in my honors class, I was successfully integrated with the regular classes, taking the test in the science lab. A girl with a bob cut poked my arm. Hey, want to help each other out? Some people better not even think about cheating. I will be watching you very closely, Mr. Russo announced, staring directly at me. I quietly raised my hand. Teacher, I want to take the test next to you. The lighting here is bad. One trick to rule them all, I'd like to see someone try to frame me for cheating when I'm sitting right next to the teacher's desk. I successfully moved to the front of the room and got my literature test paper. Literature is a subject that really depends on your foundation. If you have a strong base, you can get a decent score, even if you haven't been paying close attention in class. But this week, I'd only focused on English and math, so I was leaving literature up to fate. I wrote diligently, not leaving a single question blank. When I looked up, I saw Mr. Russo ignoring all the other students and staring only at me. Our eyes met, and I calmly looked away. I had seen that look of disgust so many times from Ethan's colleagues and classmates in my past life. I was immune to it by now. Normally, the proctors rotate between exams, so I was surprised to see Mr. Russo for the math exam as well. He was really out to get me. I remained unbothered, but then Mr. Russo did something unexpected. He sat down in the chair right in front of me and watched me do my test. What was this? So he could get a better view. But I wasn't scared. Teacher, you're blocking my light, I said sweetly, catching a glimpse of Dean Davison doing his rounds outside the classroom window. Russo, this is a mock final. You're not allowed to disturb the students. Dean Davison hissed quietly from the doorway. Now the problems seem to be solving themselves. Mr. Russo glared at me and walked to another part of the room. Thwack. A small paper ball landed on my desk. I looked up and saw Mr. Russo staring at me furiously. Aha, I knew you were going to cheat. I didn't. Don't deny it. You think the lab cameras are turned off? I'll deal with you after the exam is over. Mr. Russo took my test paper away. Whoever threw this answer key, I suggest you stand up right now. The classroom was silent and his anger grew. Soon the deans from all 3 grades were there. We were all kept in the room after the tests were collected. They checked the security footage and quickly found the girl with the bob cut. Her round face was filled with fear. She kept glancing at me, practically screaming accomplice with her eyes. Even the worst soap operas had better acting. I sighed and raised my hand. It was her. Teacher, I'm sorry. She asked me to pass her the answers. She blurted out before I could finish my sentence. I had no idea that little round-faced girl had such a loud voice. They were definitely whispering to each other before the exam started, Mr. Russo immediately added. Clara, I can't believe you would cheat. A student from the honors class cheating. You're the first. The round-faced girl started crying. Let's just confess. If we admit we were wrong, the teachers will forgive us. Who told you to frame me? I stared at her coldly. I don't even know who you are. The evidence is right here, and you're still denying it. Bad at school, bad character. Mr. Russo's face was flushed with the certainty of a scientist who had just proven a complex formula. I have evidence too. I opened my test paper and pointed to the last problem, a difficult question about the locus of a point P. This problem, I doubt she could solve it. Dean Davison looked. Sure enough, my solution for question 20 was filled out completely, while several earlier, easier questions were left blank. He then looked at the little paper ball. It had answers, but only for the simple fill-in-the-blanks and multiple-choice questions. If I can solve the last problem, why would I need her answers? Then why didn't you do the earlier ones? Dean Davison spotted the inconsistency. Mr. Russo thought I was cheating and took my paper away. I didn't have time, I said matter-of-factly. The real reason was that I had only reviewed problems about fixed points and nothing else. Even this type of problem, I had been completely stuck on until Julian happened to give me a hint that made it all click in my head. I can solve it for you right here, right now. Seeing Mr. Russo about to protest, I grabbed a marker and started writing furiously on the whiteboard at the front of the lab. I even explained my steps as I wrote. The round-faced girl was completely dumbfounded. All right, now can you tell us why you tried to frame me? The girl was taken away, and a little while later, Jessica and Julian were brought in as well. Thankfully, Julian came back quickly. Sorry for dragging you into this, I said, embarrassed. Julian just shook his head. That's when I found out that the girl with the bob cut had a crush on Julian. Jessica had manipulated her, making her believe that I was shamelessly pursuing Julian, which led to the whole setup. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have failed math, Julian said, looking at me apologetically. The corners of his eyes were a little red. A handsome guy crying is a beautiful sight, but this was obviously not normal. That's just blaming the victim. If a tree gets blown over by the wind, you don't blame the tree, do you? I whispered, trying to comfort him. You believe I had nothing to do with this? I could say it 100 times, and the answer would still be the same. I believe you. I repeated the very words Julian had said to me in my past life. That phrase, I believe this waitress, she didn't do it on purpose. His deep, magnetic voice echoed in my ears again. Why did I keep thinking about the Julian from back then? I couldn't help but blush. He's just a kid. What am I thinking? It must be because he's so handsome. Luckily, no one noticed us both blushing. Everyone was gathered around Mark, listening to him dramatically recount how Mr. Russo got chewed out by the administration. He said Mr. Russo got a real earful. The principal saw in the security footage how long he had stood next to my desk and concluded that he was a poor proctor with limited professional skills. With that good news, the English exam arrived. I casually reported Mark for trying to bring his phone into the exam. Just as I was feeling pleased with myself, Ethan appeared in front of me. After I'd put him in his place a few days ago, Ethan had stopped trying to talk to me. But just before we went into the English exam, he stopped me. I'll ask them to go easy on you when they grade it, Ethan said, then quickly walked away, not giving me a chance to fire back a few choice words. Go easy on me? So you've already decided I'm going to fail. Fueled by that anger, I scribbled furiously through the entire English exam. This time, there was no Mr. Russo to bother me, and everything went smoothly. The science exams also went off without a hitch. Now, all there was to do was wait for the results. I started clearing out my desk, planning to review all 6 core subjects over the summer break. Are you still sleeping at McDonald's this summer? It was rare for Julian to start a conversation. Maybe he still felt guilty about the cheating incident. It's warm out now, so it's fine. I had already planned to see a lawyer, so I just gave him a vague answer. How about this? I'll hire you as a tutor, $200 an hour, Julian said, as if he'd been thinking about it for a while. The cheating thing really had nothing to do with you. You don't have to worry about it, really, I rambled, then got excited and grabbed his hand. But you know, I'm actually a really good tutor. Julian's gaze drifted down to my previous test papers, which were still on the desk. I quickly slapped my hand over them. The 25 was a fluke, okay? Julian nodded and gave me his phone number. Awkward. I didn't have a phone yet. With nothing to lose, I went to Miss Albright for help, asking if she knew any pro bono lawyers who could help a student. Mr. Henderson, my student is a minor. Please do what you can to help her. I was so lucky to have such a great teacher. Miss Albright treated my problem as her own, running around to help me find legal aid. Ma'am, once I get into Harvard, I'll make sure you get interviewed by all the major news outlets, I said gratefully. Miss Albright just laughed. I was here when you were first recruited from middle school. High school is very different from middle school. I don't care what college you get into, as long as you try your best. Miss Albright thought I was joking until the next day when the final exam scores were posted. An English score of 142, top 10 in the entire city. Early in the morning, Dean Davison ran to the sophomore teacher's office, excitedly announcing the news. Everyone crowded around to see the results for the honors class and immediately started congratulating Mrs. Gable, the English teacher. They all knew Ethan was a top student, but they didn't know he was this good. Mrs. Gable feigned modesty. Oh, Ethan is just a bit lopsided. His English is excellent. When Ethan walked in, she clapped him on the shoulder. Great job. A 142. Even the top high school in the city rarely sees a score that high. Even Ethan couldn't believe it. The test was harder than usual. Maybe they graded it leniently. I don't think I did that well, Ethan said, habitually modest. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Who else in the honors class is that good at English? Mrs. Gable hadn't even looked at the name on the score report, just heard the dean announce the class number. From outside the office, I could hear the commotion. Highest English score. Miss Albright led the way, and I followed confidently. Mrs. Gable was with Ethan, about to check his other scores when she looked up and saw me. Ethan got a 142, the highest in the grade, she said, her voice full of pride. I don't think so, Mrs. Gable. Miss Albright, who had seen the full results, tried to interject. Don't, Miss Albright. Clara here made the bet herself. Our class can't accommodate such a big shot. Mr. Russo, who had long been annoyed by how I dragged down the class average, chimed in. Mr. Russo, Clara was just speaking in the heat of the moment. Can't we let it go? Ethan said, trying to mediate. What a performance. Mr. Russo, I suggest you take a closer look at the scores. Dean Davison, unable to watch anymore, prompted him. I had already guessed the outcome from the wide smile Miss Albright gave me. Literature, 99, math, 40, English, 142, physics, 40, chemistry, 29, biology, 30. Miss Albright broke the awkward silence, reading out my scores. Congratulations, Clara, your English is excellent. As for the math score, everyone knew Mr. Russo was the reason for that. If you factored in the math I didn't have time to finish, I was on track for a good state school. Mr. Russo's face went from pale to green. This is impossible, she cheated. Russo, the mock final was an original test created by the curriculum department, another teacher whispered, unable to stand it. There are no answer keys available online. Amid the chaos, Ethan just stood there, looking as if he'd been dealt a massive blow. Mr. Russo, do you get it now? I said, my voice clear and loud. I never asked Ethan for help with English, and I certainly wasn't seducing him. I can't stand him. Every single second I have to look at him makes me sick. The thought of the silent treatment, the 10 years I had wasted, the searing pain of my miscarriage, it all came rushing back and my voice was filled with a cold rage. This was Mr. Russo's mistake for not investigating properly, Dean Davison said, as if he had just remembered my impressive middle school admission scores. Clara, don't worry, I'll have Mr. Russo apologize to you. I don't need anyone's apology, I just want to switch classes. Ethan walked out of the office in a daze. He was first in the grade overall, but his English score was only second. But this was just the first step. I was going to crush him, bit by bit, during our junior year, turning him from a small-town test whiz into a small-town screw-up. I went to find Mrs. Gable, the English teacher. Ma'am, thank you for your guidance. I'd like to participate in the English competition. Having the top scorer in her subject, whether it was me or Ethan, was a win for her. Of course you can. I knew you had a lot of potential. It's just that the spot, you and Ethan are classmates. Mr. Russo must have heard about this because he showed up with Ethan in tow to try to stop me. One exam doesn't prove anything. Ethan has been number one every single year consistently. Mrs. Gable looked conflicted, so I went and got Dean Davison. The dean understood the situation immediately and gathered the other English teachers for an on-the-spot competition to decide. When his own interests were threatened, Ethan looked both pained and regretful. Besides that one time in the office, how have I ever wronged you? Why are you doing this to me? The English competition offered valuable extra points for college applications. This is all for the good of the school, I replied righteously. Then you're going to fail spectacularly, Ethan threatened. Soon, other students from the honors class came to watch. They sneered. Gets first place one time and her head gets all big. What a joke. Her grades were so bad before and now she has the nerve to challenge the number one student? Who knows if she cheated on that test? These are TOEFL speaking prompts, the dean announced. Take a look and you'll respond directly in a moment. The TOEFL has a much larger vocabulary than high school English, but doesn't focus as much on grammar. It was tailor-made for me. In my past life, I had studied for it. I just hadn't finished the process. Memorizing words was like a small ray of light in my otherwise bleak and miserable life. But Ethan didn't know any of this. All he knew was that he had attended the official competition training. "If you back out now, you won't lose so badly," he whispered. As expected, Ethan went up and spoke eloquently. His vocabulary was far beyond the high school level, almost reaching a native TOEFL level, which was very difficult for a high school student to achieve. Listening, speaking, reading, writing, and translating, he performed well in all 5 areas. The English teachers nodded in approval. "Just get down from there. Don't embarrass yourself," Jessica heckled from the crowd, and her little group of friends laughed hysterically. "And her clothes are so shabby. She's not fit for a national competition, unless it's a begging competition." "No matter how well you dress, it's still just cheap stuff from a local stall," I retorted. I raised my hand, went on stage, and let loose with fluent English, advanced vocabulary, and even some modern slang. Are you kidding me? You think I worked all those different jobs for nothing? To make more money, I specifically worked in many high-end restaurants catering to foreign tourists. Seeing the impressed smiles on the English teachers' faces, I knew I had this in the bag. "Ethan, this time I'm going to clip your wings. Getting into college?" "Not happening. Not only that, but I also successfully transferred to Miss Albright's regular class. Everything was going perfectly, though I knew I would miss having Julian as a deskmate. Over the summer, I would do my best to help him improve his math scores. Clara, the court has accepted your case. Because the property rights and your identity are clear, they will issue a ruling soon." Mr. Davis, the lawyer, told me the good news. "About the apartment, could you please help me sell it?" I had no desire to live there ever again. Just after I hung up, Julian didn't show up for our first tutoring session, but my grandma and Ricky did. Ricky was a minor, and it was only attempted assault, so he was let out after just a few days of counseling. Standing not far away from them was a stout, middle-aged couple. "You wretched girl, drop the lawsuit. The house is supposed to go to the boy. What does a girl need a house for?" My grandma started with her usual insults. "You can tell that to the judge." I didn't know how they had found me here. I started packing my books to leave. Ricky grabbed my backpack and I shot him a cold stare. The fat on his face quivered and he immediately let go. "The next time you show your face around me, I'll beat you up every single time I see you," I warned him. The middle-aged couple came over and blocked my way. "You're Clara, right? We're your grandma's third cousin's nephew's wife's something or other," the plump woman said, trying to be friendly. "We're here to mediate. You go to school, we won't stop you. When you get married, your brother will carry you to the car. We'll be your family from now on." They were so obvious about their intentions it was almost funny. And my grandma was willing to sell me out to these distant relatives just for the sake of continuing the family line. And I was supposed to be grateful that they were letting me go to school? A sour feeling rose in my chest. There's no room for discussion. From now on, let's just pretend we don't know each other. The plump woman tried to grab me, but I dodged and shouted, "Kidnappers!" Luckily, we were in a mall and security came quickly. No matter how the 4 of them tried to explain, they were thrown out. Before they were escorted away, I told the woman, "Don't come looking for me again. Otherwise, I'll make sure your son can never have children. See if I don't. If you back off now, what's my grandma's is still yours." A few days later, Mr. Davis told me they had reached an agreement. My grandma and I would split the value of the apartment 50-50. The plump woman bought the apartment for half its market value, and suddenly I had $300,000. As for how the woman would take care of my grandma from then on, that was their business. I did hear that the garage downstairs was converted into a small windowless room. I wonder who that was for. After getting the money, I bought a phone and immediately apologized to Julian. "I didn't have a phone before and something came up, so I couldn't tell you." I felt a little guilty for flaking on our first tutoring session. "I was worried about you that day, so I asked the shop owner for the security footage," Julian said, his tone unusually concerned. "Besides your grandmother, who were those other people? You can tell me. Didn't you say you believe me?" Looking into Julian's worried eyes, I caved and told him everything. Do you want me to help? Julian was angry, a complete departure from his usual cool, sleepy demeanor. I couldn't help but pinch his cheek. I can handle it myself. After all, I was almost 30 in my past life. To me, he was just a kid, but I didn't expect that small gesture to make his face flush. If you do that, I might get the wrong idea. The boy's eyes were burning with an intensity that was impossible to miss. But I still had things I needed to do. I could only laugh it off. It's senior year. What wrong ideas could there be? To stop him from asking more questions, I invited Julian to go stuff Ricky in a sack and beat him up. But Julian was in a particularly bad mood that day, which led to what happened next. Let me go! Stop hitting me! Ricky screamed in agony. As we heard footsteps approaching from the far end of the alley, Julian grabbed my hand and we ran. Ha 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 ha! That felt so good, thanks! The run had left me breathless, and I leaned against a wall to catch my breath. Julian's eyes were bright, his usual calm composure back in place. After the SATs when we're in college, I'll be waiting for you to explain that wrong idea. How did he still remember that? After setting up a regular tutoring schedule, I rented a small apartment and filled my days with studying. Hard work determines your floor, but talent determines your ceiling. Getting into Harvard wasn't something you could just talk your way into. I was sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night, completely absorbed in my studies. Summer ended quickly and the new school year started. I had a farewell gift for Julian. We won't be desk mates next semester. This is for you. Julian looked up from his desk and tapped his most recent test paper. I didn't prepare a farewell gift. Getting into a good college will be the best gift you can give me. I smiled like a proud mother. You're acting so old. Julian ruffled my hair. Says you. The next day, I saw Julian walk into Miss Albright's classroom. My dad is donating another building. Might as well use the privilege. He spread out a math test on his new desk, silencing me with the problems on the page. These two are really hard. Did you pay a fortune for this practice test again? I was immediately hooked. Let me see how I do. Math is a subject that respects time. The more you put in, the more you get out. Away from Mr. Russo's class, Julian and I started learning under Miss Albright's guidance. Even though it was a regular class with moderately difficult problems, Miss Albright didn't require us to listen to her lectures. Instead, she assigned us advanced material to self-study and held extra help sessions in the evening. This model was perfect for me. I watched my grades climb, getting closer and closer to Ethan's rank. Of course, Julian was also steadily improving. 310th, 155th, 33rd. Before the first semester finals of senior year, Maya was reading off my rankings from the last 3 monthly exams. Not even a rocket moves that fast, Maya said with envy. What did I do to deserve sitting in front of a genius? Only 33rd? You're still way behind, Jessica sneered from the doorway. Unfortunately, you can't escape the haters. We're talking in our own classroom. Who asked you to butt in? Only 33rd? What's your rank then? Maya shot back. Her uncle was a lawyer, and it showed in her sharp tongue. You! No matter what, it's better than someone who brags about getting into Harvard, Jessica's friend, a girl with short hair named Becca, retorted. Even if I don't get into Harvard, I'll still do better than you, I said, unable to stand Becca's arrogance. I turned to Jessica. Want to make a bet? On the next exam, whoever ranks lower has to go to the school gate and shout, "I'm a loser," 3 times. Jessica's grades had been pretty good this semester, but she was also aware of my rocket-like speed. Don't tell me you're scared. The taunt worked like a charm. Jessica got fired up. Who's afraid of you? You're on... I pulled Maya with me and walked back into the classroom. Julian was still catching up on sleep. He was doing much better than he had in his freshman and sophomore years. At least he could stay awake during most classes now. After Becca's provocation, Maya wasn't in the mood for gossip anymore. She went back to her seat and started doing practice problems. This time, you'll definitely beat Ethan, Julian, who had woken up at some point, said quietly. He knew how hard I had been studying. To cover 2 years of material in one semester, I had timed everything, even my water breaks. If I was a little complacent during the middle school entrance exams, I would not allow myself to fail the SATs. The second mock exam will be really hard. I'm going to crush Ethan in one go. Dealing with Jessica is just a side quest. I pumped my fist, but Julian caught it. It's okay to study for revenge, but don't forget you're mostly studying for yourself. A good university will give you more choices in life and let you get away from all these people who cause you pain. Julian's voice was unusually gentle. A free piece of advice. Go get 'em, girl. The final exam results came out quickly. I was first in the grade, far ahead of the second-place student, Ethan. First? Mr. Russo was incredulous. How can the top student be in a regular class? Then he saw the name. Clara. The other teachers who were used to my meteoric rise weren't that surprised. 1 semester left, 130 days. Miss Albright might actually produce a Harvard student, one teacher joked. She was specially recruited from middle school, after all. Just look at these scores. Ever since Clara joined her class, the other students in Miss Albright's class are much more motivated. Congratulations! Hearing the congratulations that should have been his, Mr. Russo's face twisted in disbelief. He couldn't accept it. He went to find Ethan. Ethan, she used to be so far behind you. You were also specially recruited. There's no reason she can score this high, and you can't. Looking at Mr. Russo's expectant face, Ethan felt like he was about to collapse under the pressure. I walked past them without a second glance. After listening to Julian, I had decided to give up on revenge. I was lucky enough to live again. I didn't want to let hatred blind me or corrupt my heart. I just wanted to get away from all of it and do my best to get into the college of my dreams. Of course, I knew Harvard was a long shot, but the higher I set my goal, the more motivated I would be. I didn't want any regrets. But my new desk mate, Maya, still dragged me to the honors classroom. Jessica, you haven't forgotten what you said, have you? Jessica's face was beet red. I knew it. Bad at tests, bad character, loser. I threw Mr. Russo's words right back at her. Julian was right, but sometimes a little trash talk is good for the soul. A second chance was for escaping the mud. Second semester of senior year, 2 extreme things happened. Clara, congrats! On this third mock exam, you scored 3 points higher than the top student at the best high school in the city. Maya was still the queen of gossip, always getting the news first. And you know that Ethan guy? He's studying so hard he barely looks human, but his scores are getting worse and worse. I heard he's almost out of the top 100. Ethan's ability to handle pressure was indeed poor, but he was just as hard on himself as ever. This time, he couldn't take it out on others, so he just doubled down on hurting himself. All right, the SATs are in 20 days, I said, stopping Maya's gossip, no longer paying any attention to Ethan. Julian, Maya, where are your latest practice tests? Let your dad here correct them for you. Maya shrieked a playful retort while Julian was as calm as ever. The day of the SATs arrived. As I put down my pen on the last biology question for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I knew what fulfillment felt like. You can never truly rely on others. Only you can control your own destiny. After the exam, I treated Julian to a meal. This time, it's really goodbye. I'm taking a loss and got you another gift. I carefully handed him the expensive Switch I had bought. It had cost a good chunk of the tutoring money he had paid me. Julian accepted the gift. So, can you explain that wrong idea now? What? He still remembered that. After my parents divorced, I became a kid without a real home. No matter which parent I lived with, no matter what happened, I was always the one who got blamed. Nobody ever believed me. You were the first person who ever said you believed in me. I like you. Be my girlfriend. Julian's skin was pale, and the light blush that dusted his cheeks made him look even more handsome. But I had been so hurt in my past life. I was scared. I fled in a panic. I don't do long-distance relationships, sorry. What a huge waste of money. I should have just gotten him a basketball. My broke self was crying on the inside. After that meal, I threw myself back into working part-time jobs. Bumper crop! Bumper crop! Our school's orchard has a bumper crop, harvesting an extra-large mango weighing 697 grams, ranking first in the state. It was a creative way to send out the good news. This was to get around the new policy that forbade schools from publicizing their top scorers by name. But our school was ecstatic anyway, setting off fireworks for 3 straight days, practically wanting to give every resident in the city a mango. As the big mango herself, I was given the VIP treatment. Where's Julian? After finally dealing with everyone else and finding out Maya's score, I asked about him. We're adults now. We can still be friends after a rejection. He probably went abroad, Maya said. She had done well on her exams, and her gossip energy was at an all-time high. Oh, and Tom only got into a second-tier state school. I hear he's going to repeat the year. I didn't ask about Ethan. I was just worried about Julian's score. But Miss Albright said his results were confidential, which probably meant Julian didn't do very well. I felt bad for him. I thought about it for a long time and sent him a long, encouraging text message. All I got back were 3 words. Thank you. So rude. I could have been working instead of writing that. Later, I learned that Julian was apparently traveling the world. He would post pictures on social media from every new place and send me a postcard. A rainy day in Iceland, the scorching sun in Argentina. Come back soon, school's about to start. Dad will show you the world and take you to the Harvard opening ceremony, I texted him. Liam replied, let's just meet at the auditorium. Can you even find the auditorium without me? I found that a little strange, until that day. How did you get in? I saw Liam's Harvard student ID card hanging from his neck. Maybe my dad donated another building, he joked, but what came next was no joke. He gently pulled me into a hug. A reunion gift for you, Clara? We're on the same campus. This doesn't count as a long-distance relationship, does it?